Hi there. I'm an only child and I'm pretty much accustomed to talking to myself, but this is strange. This feels a little unusual. However, when Liz gave me an opportunity to talk to you about two of my favorite things, my research project on an airline that my dad started in 1945, Veterans Air, and my RV and the connection between the two, I couldn't help myself. So here we go. Veterans Air was started in 1945, and the first DC-3 that they owned was named after me, so now I'll tell you my name. My name is Gaye Lyn. This is my dad sticking his head out of the cockpit of the DC-3, and he's pointing a cigar at my name because I'm about a week old. So that's one of my prized possessions. The rest of the visuals are going to have to come from my website if you're interested. It's veteransair.org, all one word, no hyphenations, no punctuation. And I started my research in April of 2015, so basically 70 years after the airline flew. They were based at Newark. They positioned out of Teterboro, for those of you back east that know where and what Teterboro is. And it was a childhood story. My dad talked about it a lot. My mom didn't want to talk about it at all, in part because my dad missed my birth. He was in Louisville, Kentucky, getting their first cargo flight set up. So that's just a side story. But in April 2015, I started my research with just a couple of newspaper clippings and the internet. And it never occurred to me that I would actually find any of my dad's men. And I'm saying men because actually most of the employees were men. There were a few women, and I've not yet met them. And within 3 months, I found one of my dad's actually early founders, one of the founders of the company. And he was living in Florida, still living independently, wonderful family living in nearby area. And I flew down to Florida to meet him. I have to tell you, it still gives me the goosebumps to even think about it. What an honor. And he had written a book. And the book was about his war experience, World War II, when he was a pilot. But also there was a chapter in there about Veterans Air. And I learned a lot more about the airline through Jack's story. His name was Jack Stetner. Shortly after I found Jack, I found two more men, one in North Carolina and one in New Jersey. And I've planned a trip via the airline to visit both of them. And since Thomas Cowart was in a town outside of Columbia, I had to fly into a northern city, rent a car, and drive down there. And then I drove back to that northern city and got on another airplane and flew to New Jersey. And about the end of that second trip, both of which were just phenomenal. I've met their families, I've been adopted by them. I mean, it's been an incredible experience. But I thought, if I'm going to keep doing this, I need a better mode of transportation. And it wasn't exactly that direct of a thought. One day, while I was thinking about my next trip, this little whisper of a thought went across my mind. Get an RV. And I went, where'd that come from? And then I thought, wait a minute, let's think about that again. Come back here. And I'd never been in an RV, let alone owned one or driven one. I'll fast forward to the fact that I researched for 7 or 8 weeks. I knew there were certain things I wanted. I wanted a full-size bed. I didn't want to pull what I call the bonko apart in order to sleep at night. I needed a swivel chair because I can't sit at a table and type. I get all stoved up. And right now I've forgotten what the third thing was. Well, I had to be able to drive it. I found an RV in San Diego. I live in New Mexico. I hired someone that was a professional who went and gave it an initial inspection for me. And then my husband and I flew to San Diego. It was love at first sight. I'm taping this right now from the cockpit, if you will, of the RV, from the kitchen banco. And since I'd never driven one, I hired a instructor from a truck driving company that also has an RV branch. He came to me. We were still in the driveway of the young man's house that I bought the RV from. He gave me about an hour's worth of instruction, and then for the next 5 hours, I drove my RV. On and off the California freeway, in and out of small towns. We used a church parking lot to do some parallel parking with him using cones. And by the time I was finished, I was feeling pretty good. Now my RV is 24 foot, class C. I didn't want to pull anything. The idea scares me. And we were off and running. That was April of last year. April of 2017. The rig had 43,500 miles on it when I bought it. I'm the third owner. I just checked the mileage, and we've gone 23,850 miles since then. My husband and I did a shakedown cruise, which was a good thing because there were a number of things that needed taken care of. And then, for the most part, I've been on the road by myself. I've driven to southern Florida on my own. I stopped in Dallas, Texas, to visit 2 families that I had found. P.S., by the way, since I started my research, I have met personally 4 of my dad's men. I've spoken to a 5th man via, email exchanges. I've met 3 widows whom I communicate with on a regular basis. One of the men lives in northern New Jersey, and we take turns calling each other. He's 93, and he's a kick. This whole thing has been such a great adventure for me. My first long trip was from here to Dallas, southern Florida. Then I drove up through North Carolina and stayed in Lexington, Kentucky at a fabulous RV park at there's a horse museum, and there's an RV park there. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it. I was there for a number of days. My husband flew in, and we continued that trip together. We went to Minnesota, and then we just kept going. We went north, and we visited one of the widows whom I had met before, and then we drove to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and then we drove just south of Spokane, Washington, to visit friends, and then came home through Utah. So that was a great trip. The next time I went out, I went all the way to New Jersey and back through Ohio and came home. So a good portion of the miles that I've logged have been solo. I can't tell you, I mean, you can tell by the expression on my face and my enthusiasm. This has been a fabulous adventure. Now, I'm sitting in my RV right now. Temperature tonight is going to be 19 degrees. And I am fortunate enough to have a parking space adjacent to a private home. I've got electricity and Wi-Fi. And I come here 3 times a week to continue my research. I'm using this as my office, if you will. I've got a really cool office at home, but not as cool as this. And it's been a wonderful adventure. I think the 24 foot is an absolutely perfect size for me. It parks well. I can do K-turns with it in and out of places. It's really been a pleasure. And I'm going to show you a sign that my husband gave me. It says, "Not all who wander are lost." And that's very, very true. It's certainly my motto. I'd love it if you'd visit my website, veteransair.org. There's lots of pictures. Oh, I forgot to tell you. My RV's name is Gracie. Everything that I've ever owned that rolls, whether it was my first bicycle, my first car, my first Harley, and this rig, have all had names. And her name is Gracie. She's named after my amazing Grace. And anyone who knows me that knows that there's somebody named Gracie in my life. So, Liz, that's the story. I can't thank you enough for inviting me to share it. It's been a wonderful adventure. I can go places and not feel like the families that I'm visiting need to put me up, because I got my own turtle shell right on my back. Up until now, I've made reservations in advance. My goal for this next trip is just to hit the road and sort of make my way. That may not be smart, and I may change my mind afterwards, but for the time being, that's the intention. And I hope to see you on the road someday. Take care. Bye.